an effortless way to keep your parrot's cage engaging and to make sure they get some UV and UV light. Hi, I'm Kaylin, the author of the Parrot Bliss Bond. Please be sure to get your copy on Amazon. So you have your handbook and you know that you need UV and UV light for your parrots, and then you'll know everything else you need as well. Today I've got my kayaks here, and you can see I have a green cheek on my shoulder right there. That's Markle. She's a cinnamon turquoise. Plus, I'll be showing you my Amazon Effortless, who is a red-headed Mexican Amazon. He's a mouthful. In the wild, parrots actually fly around, and unless they have a nest and they're nesting, they don't have a house, in the sense that they move around, and they may have a territory, but they move around so that everything's always changing for them. They may know their territory, but in other words, every day and every night, they're really going to sleep somewhere different. They're going to visit somewhere different. They're going to go to different trees and try to get food, that kind of thing, so that they have variety, not just in their food. Hey, don't poke a hole in my shirt, please. But also in their surroundings, really. So one of the things that can easily happen is you might leave your parrot and or your parrot's cage in one place. But when you do that, it gets pretty, it should get pretty monotone for them, because they're really used to having change. Now, if you work especially, and you can't take your parrot out during the day, or you're going to school or whatever you're doing, then it's kind of like even more so that when you change just the cage's location, that can give them a nice change. Of course, doing things like changing the sticks, their toys, all that makes a big difference too, because that also helps them have some variety. I don't know if you've noticed, but a lot of times with toys, parrots want a new toy like every other day kind of thing, because they're used to flying around and seeing something different all the time. So given that parrots also need UV and UV light, and they need the sunlight helps their feathers stay disinfected so they don't get things like feather mites, but it also helps them absorb that vitamin D so that they can then absorb their vitamin C their calcium, and have strong bones. That means that if your parrot's not out getting some light or some UV and UV light, they could be having issues with their feathers, with their bones, that kind of thing. So for me, and by the way, for most houses, most windows are made so that UV and UV light don't come in, because they're the ones that'll fade your furniture, that kind of thing. So they're kind of made to block that out. So just because your parrot's cage is by a window doesn't necessarily mean that they're getting the light that they need, unless the window's open. And if you have like a screen, that may be fine, but unless the window's open or something like that, even if some of that light's coming in through a closed window, it still may not count. So I've got this monster big cage that I could easily stand in out here. And I have to be careful who I put out here because of the bar spacing. But I rotate and I put different big birds out here so that they get some of that UV and UV light. In the morning, some of the sun comes straight in, but it also bounces around, which is why, like if you're out hiking or something, you'll still get sunburned or some coloring, even like on the bottom of your face, that kind of thing, because it will sort of bounce around a little. And so even though they're not directly in the sun, they're still getting some of the light they need. If they were directly in the sun, I would have to make sure to provide some shade, so that if they get hot and they need to come out of that sun, they can, and provide some water so that if they're hot, they can drink water. Over here, this one's a little smaller, but it works for Effortless today. And this is a little shade, but you can see I've got Effortless in here, and it's the same thing. It's just so that for a little while he can get some fresh air and sunshine. Now, and it also gives him a change of scenery. And to me, I think that for birds, watching the great outdoors is kind of like television for humans, because sometimes birds fly by, sometimes a gecko goes up the screen, sometimes a lizard goes by. It's like entertaining for them. And I've noticed, like, you can even see Ursulus is kind of watching that way. And then he turns around. So, so that he can have a little excitement instead of whatever's going on in my house. Now, I am fortunate because I have another lanai, and the weather's really nice, so it's not a problem. You can always put your parrots outside, but they have to be acclimated to the weather. So if it's cold, they have to already be used to it, or if it's hot, they have to already be used to it. And so, depending, like, when it's cold, I actually don't put them out. I'm like, oh, I'm afraid to put my birds out. It's only 70, it's only, 65 degrees. And it sounds a little ridiculous, but my birds just, they're used to the Florida weather, which is warmer, generally speaking. And they're also used to being inside. I just saw a blue jay. I'm sure we won't catch him, but a blue jay just went in right around there. He went down. And so if he comes back up, maybe we'll try to catch him. And that's what I'm talking about for the Parrots entertainment. I could see him on the ground. It gives them something to watch, and I think they really like that. And I really like that because they're in here and there's a ceiling over them, that means that no outside birds can fly over and poop, unfortunately, right over their cage, and have the poop land in their food or something like that. Because when you have that kind of scenario, then one of the things that can happen is your parrots can catch, diseases, get sick from whatever the wild fauna has. So I'm fortunate because I have a great setup here. Now, how much time does your bird need? How much exposure to the outdoors? I have found that it depends on who you ask. And all of my experts agree that it's imperative, it's really good for them. They just think it's like a bird that's outside is healthy. And of course, unless there's poop falling into their cage. The fresh air is really good for them. And of course, that sunlight. Now, on Dr. K emergency room, she says that they need about 10 hours a week. I don't think I've gotten like my veterinarian or my mentor to really commit to a time. I think they're like just they need to be outside. And I'm like, well, how much time? And the point is that to them, it's best when they are like unless they're like with you, it's just so beneficial for them to have the fresh air and the light. So I guess, it's like I kind of go by, I try to rotate my birds out twice a week, and they're out most of the day from, I don't know, it depends, 8, 9 to, I usually bring them in around 5. And so they get several hours. And so if they get out here once a week, but twice a week, I'm feeling pretty good. So it just sort of depends on, I think you just have to kind of monitor your bird. Now, you can't really monitor the effect of they're not getting to absorb that calcium. And so that's kind of not so good. There's one other thing. What was it? Oh, lights. Now, if you are not able to put your birds outside because they're not acclimated and the weather is getting cold, then you're going to want to use a light. There are a couple different kinds of lights. One is a full spectrum. Full spectrum doesn't necessarily have UV and UB. It sounds like it should. We got these big full spectrum lights. They're beautiful. They make it look like daylight. And I don't know that they're really giving my birds the UV and UB. So then we got some other lights. You can look a lot of the times for the reptile lights. They're like loving on my fingers and not going to let go. They're like, we want to be inside playing, not outside getting fresh air. Who wants fresh air and sunshine? They're like kids. We don't want that. If you look at getting reptile lights, which a lot of times that's sort of a good place to find UV and UB lights, just watch because some have heat and some are just the UV and UB. And I find that you don't really need the heat. I mean, maybe you do. Maybe if you're somewhere cold or something like that. But of course, since parrots are warm-blooded and they have feathers, they don't really need the heat. So I don't like to add heat. I'm in Florida. We don't need heat. And so I am always careful to make sure that I get UV and UB. I do use some UV and UV lighting indoors for some of my smaller parrots, who I also try to rotate outside, but it's not necessarily as easy to rotate like my parrotlets because they're more sensitive to the heat and the cold, and so it's a little harder to bring them out, so I do have lights for them. And then this time of year, I try to open the windows so that they're having that the UV and UB coming in, and they're having the well, that was a nice shot of your bottom, and they're having that fresh air. Look at this is a monkey. This is a monkey. Hi, Ketsy monkey. Hi, Ketsy monkey. He's like, please let me come play, and I'm like, I'm sorry, you gotta get some sun and some fresh air. Doctor's orders. All right, if you have any questions about parrots, please be sure to comment below. If your parrot is stressed, please be sure to get Tink's Parrot Relief on parrotbliss.com. It is CBD in hemp oil. It has the right balance of omegas, the hemp oil, for you or your parrot, so it's going to promote health. Plus, the CBD won't make your parrot trip, but it does have beneficial stuff. So if your parrot's a little hyper or stressed out for any reason, it helps restore some balance. And it can also help with other things, including supporting a healthy immune system. Thank you for joining me in this blissful video. You can also join me on Parrot Bliss Flock, which is my group on Facebook, because I love connecting and I love hearing about how you're doing with your parrot. Until next time, I will catch you in the next feathered video.